Usually when we talk about a building's architecture, there's this like expectation of physical certainty.
Right, like engineering and blueprints.
Exactly. You look at the blueprints, you see the steel beams, the concrete foundation, and the architect points, and basically says, there it is, that's the bottom, bedrock or bust.
We really like our physical spaces to be finite, to be entirely knowable.
Yeah, we do. But in Max and Claude's novel Basement Level Infinity, those blueprints are completely worthless. So today, we're stepping into the Albrecht building.
Which is such a wild concept.
It really is. At first glance, it's just an ordinary 13-story commercial space with 3 regular basements. But occasionally, if you're standing in the elevator, an unmarked button appears on the panel below B3.
And pressing it means descending into, the physical architecture of your own consciousness.
Right. And to you, our intensely curious listener who wants to bypass the usual information overload, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack this central mystery. Like, what actually happens when you take that elevator down?
And more importantly, how does descending into the absolute depths of the self profoundly change the way you view the messy, noisy, everyday surface world? Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to even begin to understand this elevator, we first have to look at the bizarre physical and psychological evidence left behind by the people who actually come back.
Right. The novel introduces us to Tomás. He's an archivist by trade, so he's incredibly rigorous.
Oh, yeah. He documents all these cases in a specific Croatian Maja notebook. He calls the people who take this trip the returned.
Yeah, and he manages to track them down by connecting with Prausch, the building's facilities manager.
Prausch is such a great character.
He really is. For 22 years, he's kept a secret log of these impossible incidents. He keeps it locked in a fireproof box down in the mechanical basement.
And when Tomás starts tracking these incredible anomalies, the first thing he notices is the temporal distortion. Time simply breaks down the further you go.
Totally. You might experience a few minutes down there, but hours or even days have passed up top. It's wild. Deeper depth equals a massive deceleration of subjective time.
Think about how we measure time, right? It's entirely tied to surface phenomena, the rotation of the Earth, the sun, our daily schedules.
Yeah, clocks and alarms.
Exactly. So when you descend into a space that is divorced from all those external navigation tools, the brain's internal rhythm just stretches out. A minute of pure consciousness feels like an eternity.
Because there's nothing to anchor it to. That explains so much about the psychological traces they bring back. Like, Tomás finds this teenager, Sophia, who disappeared for 14 hours.
But to her, it felt like, what, 40 seconds?
Yeah, 40 seconds. But when she came back, she had completely lost the ability to read analog clocks.
It's completely gone.
It wasn't even a memory lapse. The actual conceptual translation of hands on a dial was just excised from her brain. Moving through space without time literally caused her neural pathways to prune that specific skill.
What's fascinating here is that the changes in the returned are universally subtractive.
Right. Nobody comes back with a superpower.
No extra items, no telepathy. Yeah. And the physical subtractions are just as jarring. Like, moving through a space without standard dimensions completely scrambles the physical return.
Oh, Reyes is the perfect example of that. She's this night shift worker who took the elevator and came back with her shoes on geometrically wrong.
Not just swapped left for right.
No, the text describes it as a physical inversion so impossible to process, like a hypercube forced into 3 dimensions, that when her coworker Dimitri looked at her feet, his brain just short-circuited.
Yeah, he literally quietly vomited into a potted ficus.
It's so gross, but it's a brilliant way to show that the deeper you go, the more the fundamental rules of reality just fray.
But the psychological subtractions carry even more weight, I think. You have Feng, who went down twice and lost his sense of embarrassment.
Like, completely lost it.
Completely. Not his conscience or his guilt, mind you. Just that highly specific, paralyzing social performance anxiety, the fear of being perceived poorly. It just vanished.
Wow. And Reyes, the woman with the impossible shoes, she cleanly lost her fear of death.
Just gone.
It's like you're walking down the street, you pat your pockets, and you realize your keys are gone. Except instead of your keys, it's a chronic low-grade depression you've been carrying since high school.
Right, you check your emotional pocket, and it's just an absence.
But wait, if the elevator is selectively stripping away only these specific things, like social anxiety or existential dread, doesn't that imply there is some sort of intelligence or, I don't know, a selector down there doing the removing?
That is the exact realization that forces Tomás to act. He figures out that these fears and anxieties are heavy,
Yeah.
but they don't actually support the functional structure of the self.
They aren't load-bearing.
Exactly. So, armed with his notebook, a pencil, and an emergency whistle.
Which is such a wonderfully absurd item to bring into the architecture of consciousness.
It really is. So he goes to the Albrecht building on a quiet Thursday night. His friend Benedict, who is a structural engineer, waits in the lobby.
And Tomás steps into the elevator. The unmarked button appears. He presses it, and the descent begins.
He bypasses the numbered floors entirely.
Yeah, he notes the physical sensation shifting. It feels more like moving through pressure rather than physical space. And when the doors open at the first infrabasement B1, he steps into the layer of the body.
Right, and it's exactly 37 degrees.
Human body temperature. And the floor yields under his boots like muscle. The whole space is bathed in this reddish-orange light. It is just the pure animal floor of the self, totally stripped of language.
Down here, Tomás experiences pure, fundamental hunger, but not as a panic.
Yeah, on the surface, hunger is a lack, a problem.
Exactly. But here, he experiences it as a profound relief. Like Goran, the accountant mentioned earlier, who felt comfortable on this level for the first time since childhood.
Because the physical demands of the body aren't problems to be managed by the social self anymore. They are just the simple mechanics of being alive.
Right. It's liberating.
But once Tomás experiences the physical relief of the body on that first floor, the natural question is, well, what happens to the emotional baggage?
If the body is just a metabolic engine down there, where do all our complex feelings and traumas go?
Exactly. That curiosity pushes him to hit the button again. He descends to the second infrabasement, which is memory.
This level is visually so striking. When he steps out into B2, the air is blue, and the floor is flawlessly smooth, but it reflects his movements with a half-second delay.
That delay sounds incredibly destabilizing.
It is, because it separates his action from his perception of himself. He is essentially watching his own echo, and drifting through the air in this space are these fragments of pure emotion.
He touches one and is just overwhelmed by ancient grief. Then he touches another and feels oceanic joy.
But these feelings aren't attached to a specific memory, right? It's not about a person or an event. It's just the distilled essence of the feeling itself.
And this introduces that amazing concept of composting.
Yes. This is how the returns lose their anxieties. The things they lost weren't stolen. They were released into this level.
Because on the surface, we attach a heavy narrative to everything. We build a story around why we are anxious.
But in the second Infrabasement, that narrative context is just stripped away. The emotional residue is broken down like organic compost.
So the fear of death or social anxiety is recognized as non-load-bearing weight. It's detached from the story of the self and just drifts away in the blue air.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights Tomás's theory of the stratigraphy of self.
The geological layers of the mind.
Right. We start with the performed social self at the surface, descend into the animal body in B1, drop further into the composted emotional residue in B2, and then finally arrive at the core.
Which is the third infrabasement, identity. He steps out into a vast library. But the shelves aren't full of books.
No, they're full of what the text calls configurations.
Stable, architectural arrangements of being. He walks the aisles until he finds his own organizational pattern. He reaches out to touch it, and the pattern looks back at him.
It's a breathtaking moment of mutual gaze. Tomás realizes that identity is not some inert file sitting in a drawer. It is the deep structural engineering that organizes the body and the memory.
Okay, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate here. If my true identity is just some architectural configuration sitting on a shelf in a metaphysical basement looking back at me, doesn't that render my actual life up here completely fake?
I love that you brought that up because Tomás is very careful not to let the reader fall into that trap. The surface life isn't fake at all.
How so?
Well, think of his friend Benedict, the structural engineer waiting in the lobby. He would tell you that the foundation and the steel skeleton of a skyscraper aren't more real than the party happening on the penthouse floor.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. The foundation only exists so that the party can happen. The identity on the shelf is the anchor. But the surface, the way you laugh at a specific joke, your messy relationships, that is the spectacular, dynamic expression of that structure.
The anchor that lets the kite fly. That makes so much sense. But Tomás doesn't stop at his own foundation.
No, he doesn't.
Having held that mutual gaze, he realizes there's still something underneath his individual identity. So he leaves the numbered floors entirely. He descends into the fourth infrabasement, which is consciousness itself.
And the vocabulary really starts to break down here because he is entering a space that precedes language.
Yeah, he uses this incredible analogy to explain it. He says his thoughts are like floating logs on a river. Up on the surface, we spend our whole lives convinced that we are the logs.
We identify with our passing thoughts.
Exactly. But down in the fourth infrabasement, he realizes he is both the specific thoughts, the logs, and the river itself, the medium of awareness.
And he notes that this medium isn't a cold, mechanical void. It's warm. He senses a presence that is intensely interested.
That feeling of being observed with interest pulls him even further, below the named levels entirely, into what the text simply calls the deep.
The ground of being, the oldest thing in the architecture of existence.
It's so profound. He encounters this presence that doesn't use words but communicates directly into his mind. And this presence looks at Tomás, attends to him completely, and finds him to be good.
And it's crucial to note that it doesn't mean morally good.
Right, it's not judging his past actions.
Good here means structurally sound, intrinsically valuable, like a perfectly formed crystal.
Tomás actually starts crying because the absolute validation of simply existing is so overwhelming. He takes out his notebook and writes, "I don't know what you are. What did you find?"
Because he realizes this presence has been sending the elevator up for decades, just inviting people down to observe them.
And the presence replies with a pure emotional tone delight.
Later in the novel, Tomás meets an oceanographer named Yale. She studies the Haddle Zone, the absolute deepest, most crushing parts of the ocean.
Where ancient life just barely persists.
Exactly. And Yale's deep ocean serves as a brilliant countermetaphor. The bottom of the physical ocean is entirely indifferent to humanity. It does not care if we exist.
But the infrabasement is the exact opposite. The ground of being is filled with tender curiosity. It desperately wants to know what it is like for us to live in the shallows.
It loves the surface.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Usually, spiritual stories tell us the surface world, our daily life, is an illusion, a distraction from enlightenment.
Right, go meditate in a cave.
Exactly, go escape into the deep. But Max and Claude completely flip the hierarchy. Here, the depth is just a vantage point to appreciate the beautiful, messy complexity of the surface.
It finds our traffic noise and our daily frustrations absolutely extraordinary because it cannot experience them directly. The surface isn't a failure of the deep. The surface is the entire point.
Wow. So armed with the ultimate validation from the universe, Tomás hits the button to go back up. Imagine coming back from that.
You step out of the elevator into the lobby, and Benedict's been waiting almost 12 hours.
11 hours and 40 minutes, even though Tomás only experienced a few hours. And almost immediately, Tomás experiences the dissolving.
The raw immediacy of the descent begins to fade like a dream right after you wake up.
The structural changes remain, but the vividness dissolves. Which honestly brings up a tragic point. I want to ask you, the listener, what do you think is the hardest part about coming back?
You'd think it's the temporal shock.
But it's not. Tomás discovers from the other, returned, that the hardest part is actually interacting with other people.
Because you're walking around the city, seeing every single exhausted person on the subway, knowing absolutely that they are intrinsically good.
That they are being attended to with tender curiosity by the universe. But you have absolutely no social grammar to tell them that.
Like, how do you walk up to someone holding their coffee, stressed about an email, and say, hey, the oldest thing in the architecture of existence finds your specific life to be a marvel?
I mean, Feng tries. Feng lost all his social embarrassment, so he just walks up to strangers and says, "You're enough. I know you don't believe it right now, but you are."
And half the time people think he's unwell.
But the other half of the time, they just quietly weep on the train platform. They were waiting their entire lives for someone to say it.
We see the weight of this knowledge beautifully illustrated through Proush, too, the facilities manager.
Oh man, his backstory breaks my heart.
The novel reveals that he actually pressed the button himself back in 2001. He was exhausted, his wife was dying in the hospital, and he went down into the deep.
And the deep didn't magically fix his life. It didn't cure his wife. She still passed away.
But the descent gave him the unshakable peace of knowing that whatever happened on the chaotic surface, on the deepest structural level, they were both being attended to. It would be all right.
It provides this quiet, devastating closure for his character. But Tomás is an archivist, right? He feels a responsibility to the data.
He has to share it. Which, this raises an important question. How do we transmit this knowledge when the shallows are so loud and the knowing of the deep is so quiet?
You can't just hand someone a list of facts about the Infrabasement and expect them to feel the delight.
His therapist friend Petra points out that a dry architectural text won't work. The book itself has to be the elevator.
Yes. He realizes he has to write a narrative that forces the reader to slow down and descend psychologically, since we can't all physically find the unmarked button.
It's a brilliant meta-narrative trick by the authors. The book Tomás writes is designed to mimic the descent.
It starts with the fast, noisy vocabulary of the surface. Then, chapter by chapter, the syntax actually slows down.
The language shifts from literal descriptions to pure imagery and emotional resonance. It guides the reader down through the body, memory, and identity.
Until they arrive at that final realization of being found good. The reader feels the descent. It forces the audience to undergo their own psychological composting as they read.
So, bringing it all together, the ultimate lesson of the Albrecht building isn't that you need to escape your messy life to find meaning.
No, the lesson to you, listening to this right now, is that your life, with its unread emails, its traffic noise, the smell of coffee, your specific heartbreaks, is an extraordinary marvel.
It is being watched over with tender curiosity by the deepest architecture of existence. The shallows are entirely worth the depth.
It acts as a profound defense of ordinary daily life. But I want to leave you with one final haunting image from the text to ponder.
Because throughout the book, we kind of assume the Albrecht building is a unique anomaly.
Right. But as Tomás explores the city afterward, he theorizes that any place of deep human interiority could be an aperture. Think about the specific metallic smell of ancient underground subways.
Or the echoing mineral cold of a subterranean parking garage.
We are constantly trying to construct physical spaces that match the depth of our internal geography. The human drive to build basements is almost an animal pull toward the deep.
And at the very end of the novel, the new facilities manager, Davy, is standing in the elevator.
She sees the unmarked button appear, and she reaches out to press it. But the authors don't follow her down.
No, the narrative pans outside the building, across the street, to a little girl in an apartment.
She is simply pressing her face against the cold glass of her window, looking out at the city lights, finding them beautiful before society has a chance to tell her what she should or shouldn't find beautiful.
It is a moment of pure, uncurated experience.
And the text tells us that the deep is attending to her in that exact moment with total delight. The connection happens anywhere the surface is experienced with pure presence.
The deep is always watching the shallows, waiting for those moments of clarity.
So consider this. The next time you find yourself entirely alone in a deep, quiet space, whether it's an actual basement, an empty subway station at midnight, or just the sudden quiet of your own mind, you might still be in the building, and that elevator might be waiting for you. Go enjoy the noisy, messy, beautiful shallows today. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.